Can't hear. Can't hear.
Okay, I will admit everyone. We have 38 people.
Oh. A quick question, brother. Is the fan noise too much in the background?
No, it's perfect. Nothing to worry about. All good, sister. Okay.
Brother, tell me when to start. Huh?
Yeah, we can start now. I will admit everyone. We have 38 people.
A quick question, brother. Is the fan noise too much in the background?
No, it's perfect. Yes, brother Ramesh, you can start. We're already live.
Yes. Shall I start, brother?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Or you want to wait a couple of minutes?
No, we'll start.
So all right. Good morning, everyone. Heartfulness Malaysia, as the host, welcomes all viewers and our participants of the 90-day challenge to the fourth talk in this series of virtual talks for the duration of the challenge. For our participants, it is day 28 of the challenge, and we encourage everyone to practice like never before. I'm Shanti, and I wish to give a very special welcome to our honored speaker, Dr. Rama Devagupta. She's all the way from Richland, Washington. Despite having a very busy schedule lately, including relocation of her class, she has set aside time for us. It really shows her sense of discipline and commitment. Sister Rama, it is indeed a pleasure to welcome you again with us for online learning sessions, this time as part of the 90-day challenge. You had joined us, I think in July, for a talk on Sankalpa. Rama Devagupta is a 9 to 12 grade teacher at Kenwick, Eastern Washington. She is a National Board Certified Teacher, AYA Biology, AP Reader, Advanced Neural Educator, Honorary Reviewer of the Journal of College Science Teaching, and NEA Foundation 2022 Global Learning Fellow. She holds a doctorate in bioorganic chemistry from Texas A&M University. She teaches AP Biology, Honors Biology, and Forensics at Southridge High, and is an adjunct chemistry instructor at Columbia Basin College, Pasco, Washington. As a Murdoch Partners in Science Fellow, Rama did research at the Pacific Northwest National Laboratories, Richland, in 2018 and 2019. She's passionate about evidence-based best practices in education, fostering critical thinking skills in her students and educating them in scientific research. Rama is a strong proponent of heart-centered teaching, as well as whole child brain-based learning and places importance about doing hands-on science with students. She cares deeply about equity, diversity, social justice, the future of our planet, and the impact of climate change on our children's future. Sister Rama is a lifelong learner and passionate about integrating science, spirituality, educational research, and art in her daily life. She's humbled and grateful to be a part of the NEA Foundation's 2022 Global Learning Fellows cohort. As for our other contributions, Rama is a freelance writer, a public speaker, and has published over 100 articles on comparative spirituality. Born and raised in India, Sister Rama was interested in spirituality from a young age. She's a certified mindfulness trainer since 1994, who devotes her free time to bringing peace and harmony in the world by teaching meditation and relaxation. She is grateful to use these gifts to serve her community through various workshops such as heart care for educators, de-stressing during COVID-19, the scientific benefits of meditation, learning and the brain, and heart care for youth. She has served as a faculty member of the Sahajmark Research and Training Institute, as well as a contributing editor for the quarterly journal Constant Remembrance from mid-90s to mid-2000. In addition to her column titled Patanjali, Rama wrote for several other publications also. With all her many achievements, as a person, I've always found her to be approachable, down to earth, and communicate with heart and voice. If anyone is interested to read the full biography, I'll be happy to forward because it's quite interesting. So now we will welcome Sister Rama to take over and start the session for us. Thank you, Dr. Rama.
Thank you, Sister Shanti, Brother Ramesh, all my sisters and brothers from Malaysia and other places who are watching. I'm very honored and humbled to be with you today. Really, whatever I've shared about myself is in many ways a barrier to my spiritual growth also. So please don't even think that those are achievements. But the reason I put it forward is so people know that spirituality and our work, they can be in harmony. So thank you once again. And I would like to get us started with the short centering prayer. So let's go ahead and sit comfortably. And let's begin with a soft, gentle smile, which reaches our eyes and our heart, honoring ourselves for making time for ourselves today to be a part of this 90-day challenge, to practice like never before, and for each other's company, for our community of like-minded seekers and wayfarers. If you're sitting on a chair like I am, feel yourself grounded on your chair. If your feet are on the ground, feel them touching the ground. Perhaps they're crossed or on the carpet. Let your body relax slowly, starting from our feet, Feel the healing energy of Mother Earth moving up our feet, through the lower legs, to the upper torso, our shoulders, our arms, our facial muscles. Let's center ourselves in our heart and begin with the prayer that may this session unfold as per the divine wish of the hierarchy of our masters. May we participate with an open heart and allow the master to listen and speak whatever needs to be said. Let's pray for the well-being of all humanity. Have the idea that everybody is absorbed in godly remembrance, in divine remembrance. Take a deep breath and gently let go. Anchoring ourselves in our heart. Let's gently open our eyes, very softly and very gently. Let's turn our head all the way from left to right, looking at the wall and the objects around us, and think that they're also absorbed in godly remembrance. I often remember Babuji saying that all you have to do is turn your head from here to there. I have turned my head many times and I'm still here. So I guess I still have to figure out what that turning of head is. But I remember Charaji once said that it is from here to here, from the mind to the heart. The topic for today is practice and devotion. And honestly, I'm really feeling like I'm in my classroom, like my science experiment. I had planned everything for my class. Suddenly something changed overnight and I don't even have a PowerPoint or anything, and they're completely unknown results. So literally this is going to unfold as per his wishes. So practice and bhakti. Bhakti, we don't really have an appropriate word for bhakti in English. So I started with the Smriti series on devotion. And this has excerpts of readings from Lalaji, Babuji, and Chariji. It was published in 2014. And we will start with this, but before we go there, I'm going to request our sister who's going to read the Whispers for today to get us rolling. So Brother Kumar, would you please display the Whispers?
Whispers from the brighter world, received from beloved Master, Revered Babuji Maharaj, on Thursday, May 26, 2016, at 9:30 a.m. The time of childhood, of innocence passes quickly, and the human being is then confronted with the reality of life, with trials which are not lacking. They are formative and necessary, it is said, and at the journey's end, its assessment shows it. They have a preponderant role. Acceptance, the love it allows to develop within oneself, embellishes each trial. To cultivate this love in a state of surrender and fervor is a gift divine. It elevates the soul towards its highest destiny. A true spiritual undertaking has this noble goal. From one incarnation to the next, a link is created where fervor is maintained. Nothing is lost of what is noble and beautiful. This capital fluctuates, takes on a growing importance to lead the soul to its total fulfillment. Following a spiritual way opens up perspectives and adds value to this capital, which is so often ignored by human beings who are caught in the movement of life and the ambient negativity. They neglect this innate treasure until the day when the divine splendor reveals itself in its many manifestations. When human beings become really aware of this potential, prospects unfold before them. They reassess their understanding of life and become truly committed for their greatest good. We have this joy of witnessing the commitment of our abhyasis, their progress, and the journey they are making on this remarkable path. Why not say, Sahajma is not ordinary and neither are its results. To all, the best, along with our blessings. Babuji.
Thank you, Sister Levia. I invite our sisters and brothers to put in the chat what stood out to them. A word, a phrase, a new understanding from the Whispers reading.
Could the whispers be displayed? Let it be displayed.
Yeah, we can do that.
Brother Kumar, can you display the whispers?
And done, sister.
Yeah. Thank you. So we can slowly scroll, and as we are scrolling down slowly, just look for some keywords. What stands out for us? And you can start typing in the chat.
Would you like me to read some of them?
That would be lovely. Thank you.
Okay. There was a comment saying acceptance from somebody else, innocence, trials, this acceptance again, commitment, acceptance, surrender,
We can take two more words.
there's love,
Thank you.
opens our views.
Yeah. Thank you, sister.
You must mute the.
Thank you. So when I first read this whisper, I had the idea that we do want to start with the whisper, but I couldn't really find something that resonated for me tonight. And then finally, with the help of another sister, we found this. And for me personally, that first paragraph and the first phrase, the time of childhood, of innocence, it really stood out for me. And I thought how appropriate this is for our topic on bhakti. If we think about the saints, a lot of our bhaktas were adults, but we had several bhaktas who were little kids, like Dhruva and Prahlad. As a scientist and an educator, I also feel that every child is a scientist, because every child is constantly wanting to break things apart to figure out what's happening. And as adults, we come in and we say, no, 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 don't do this, don't do that, don't mess up the house, keep it clean. And by the time our children are in elementary and middle school, they've lost their innocence. They have lost their spirit of wonder. They have become cognizant of the fact that there's a judgment around us in our world, and they're afraid to explore. And when that is the case, what happens in terms of our spirituality? I remember as a little girl wondering about several things. And I was born and raised in India, and I'm 58. And it was a little different at that time compared to today's children's upbringing. I remember that when we went to our grandparents and I asked a question, why is that? I would be told, you just have to do it, okay? I would be asking, like at the dinner table or while cooking, you know, those days, my grandmothers, they would wear a wet sari and do their cooking. And I would say, why does it have to be wet? Okay, you're asking too many questions, things like that, right? Okay, so fortunately, my father always inculcated the spirit of inquiry, and he always encouraged us to ask questions. And so I'm very grateful for that. So without going into details, I just want to say when I came to Sahaj Marg, I just fell in love with it because the first thing I read was that you must ask questions. You must test. You must check who this guide is. And once you have found your answers, and once you have determined that this is the path, then all the next things come in. But Babaji also said that if your heart says that this is not the teacher for me, you should move forward. And if it so happens that you accepted a guru and the guru has taken you to their stage, after that, it is the guru's prime responsibility to direct you to the next teacher. Just like we go from elementary to middle to high school and everything, right? And another thing, in Heart to Heart, Volume 2, when Chariji was giving talks in France, there's one talk where he says that he said to Babuji, see, all this is well and good that you are my guru and you are going to take care of me and lead me to the goal and all that. But what happens after I die or after you leave the body? And Babuji said, the journey continues. And so it's not just for this lifetime. And then at some point in that same speech, Chariji said that the guru will never cut the relationship. But in a vain, ego-filled moment, the abhyasi can do that. When an abhyasi says, I'm done, you're no longer my master, or this is no longer my system, it's very difficult to again come back and find that path. So then he advises us that having found the guru, we have to tie ourselves to the guru, to the master, with ropes of steel, iron and steel, so that in a weak, vain, ego-filled moment, we do not break that connection. I was very, very grateful when I read that. I just felt it was so right. And here in this whisper next, it says, childhood, the age of innocence, passes quickly, and the human being is then confronted with the reality of life with trials, which are not lacking, which a couple of our sisters and brothers mentioned. They're formative and necessary, it is said. And at the journey's end, its assessment shows it. They have a preponderant role. Acceptance, the love it allows to develop within oneself, embellishes each trial. To cultivate this love in a state of surrender and fervor is a gift divine. One of the big changes that happened to me after Daji, our current master, started leading us forward, the word that stood out to me was acceptance, and cheerful acceptance and joy. And so a few months ago, I was like, is this something new that Daji is telling us? Did Chariji never talk about it? Did Babuji never talk about it? And I started going back and looking at the literature, and it was, of course, there. I mean, I could find these words in both of them, their works. And then I realized, each of these words resonate as we grow. At different phases of our journey, different words resonate with us. And so then I started thinking about Bhakti. So several years ago, in the second preceptors seminar in Cormets, I think, Chariji drew a triangle, an isosceles triangle, okay? And he said, karma and jnana are the base of the triangle and bhakti is at the top. So karma is our practice, the morning meditation, the evening cleaning, the maxims. And the jnana is the knowledge that comes with each of these conditions. And I will be honest, I am really not qualified to talk about jnana. And he talks about bhakti. And he says that, our system of Sahaj Marg, which is Raja Yoga, where we use the mind to regulate the mind, it has all these three components in it, and everything culminates. And that's why Raja Yoga is called the king of yogas. But again, I became more and more interested to know about Bhakti. And talking about it from a personal level, my father, he was very much into spirituality, started with the religion basis. He built a temple in Korba, Madhya Pradesh, where we grew up. He went from house to house, collected donations, and he built the temple. He was barely at home. And I remember I was in 7th grade, and the Pratishta, the Prana Pratishta for the idols was taking place. And I was sitting there, and I saw that I found that I observed, I'm a 7th grader, okay? And I'm observing people are talking about work. People were talking about jewelry. People were talking about clothes. And people in the front were singing bhajans. And as a young 7th grader, I felt very disillusioned. I felt like, what is this? We're in a temple. Bhajans are going on and people are chatting. And it just made me feel like, I don't know if I can respect my elders. Fast forward, after I became serious in my practice in my mid-20s, for the first time, I felt I have a master. When Chariji said, welcome, sister, in Malina, it felt so genuine. When I looked at our brothers and sisters, and I looked at our preceptors, I felt they're worthy of my respect. This is the system for me. And the journey started with intensity. And this reminds me about Voice Reel, where Babaji talks about 3 phases of devotion, where everything is first very visible, very intense. And then it kind of smolders down. And then Charji also uses an example of, if you have a charcoal fire, and in the morning, you just have to push the embers a little bit for the fire to burn again. And around that time, it's possible that because we are not sensitive, at least I haven't been sensitive, we may lose track of what is happening. Alternatively, in the Whisper, it talked about trials and tribulations. And so we get involved in mission work. I was very involved in mission work. And I was so happy. But certain things happened, and there were some bumps in my path. And the reason I mention this is because there's the danger of getting attached to mission work and forgetting our goal. And when that happens, and the practice is getting mechanical, and the work is what is taking my prime time and attention, I'm losing inward focus. Circumstances are created where you are jolted out of it. And I remember being very disillusioned at one point. But I remember also one more thing at the same time. I remember saying to myself, Master is my spiritual father. I have a right to get angry with my own father, biological father. And yes, I do get angry with my biological father. I get angry with my biological mother. Why can't I get angry with my biological father? But I'm going nowhere. I'm right here. And so I bring us back to this thing about tie yourself to the master with ropes of steel, so that in one weak, vain, ego-filled moment, you don't get disconnected. And so the importance of the practice is that when you face trials, and I'm not really talking about material trials, because facing material trials was easy for me. My husband was working for Enron, and when Enron collapsed, people were asking me, how can you smile? Your husband lost his job. You don't have a job. And I remember saying, we have enough savings for 6 months. And both our parents love us. I'm sure they'll give us some rice and dal for 6 months while we find a job. So we are good for 1 year. So the material trials never shook me like my spiritual trials did. And then I had to kind of, find a way for me to stay connected when my heart was not in the practice. And I told my preceptor, and hopefully she's listening today. She asked me one day, are you meditating? And I said, no, I don't feel like it. And I was honest. And so if we go through a phase where we don't feel like meditating, the honest thing to do is to say, I don't feel like meditating, and not meditate. Can be inauthentic, got to be authentic. And this is a good thing I went through, because it helped me understand when my brothers and sisters are saying, like, I don't feel like meditating. Yeah, I felt that myself, and it's okay. My kids are in their mid-20s. Sometimes they talk to me daily. Sometimes they don't talk for weeks. Well, not weeks, maybe a week, because they're super busy, but that connection is there. So that connection with the master is always there, whether we are able to go through the external discipline of practice or not. The inner discipline is what's important, that connection. And I'll tell you another story about connection. I was remembering in these last couple of days, I was very, very methodical when I was young. And all my younger brothers and sisters, I ask you to be methodical with your practice. Because as life moves forward, there'll be times when you won't be able to meditate. So when I became a young mother and my 2 children are 18 months apart, I was well established to practice quote unquote constant remembrance, which was not really constant remembrance, but infrequent remembrance in my case. So I'm going to talk to you quickly about this whole thing about constant remembrance and how it was for me. So one of the things Charji said once was, the purpose of our practice is that at the moment of death, you're not even aware that you are about to die. Because every meditation is a process where you're dying to yourself. You're not existing in that time of meditation. And the importance of constant remembrance. So I was about to give birth to my first child, my son. And I was very sure that I did not want any kind of medication or epidural or anesthesia or anything, because we are in the natural way. And I was like, unless my body cannot handle it, no medicines. I want a natural birth for my child. And so after several hours of labor, all I could feel was pain, immense pain. And in that pain, I was thinking all this practice is supposed to lead us to remembrance. And all I can feel is pain, and I cannot remember anything about everything we're supposed to be going through in terms of constant remembrance, right? And so there's the physical pain of labor, okay? And I remember holding my husband's belt so tight and saying, I cannot bear this anymore. And no epidural. But I cannot bear this pain anymore. And I remember saying to him, I need you to take me away from here. I can't bear this anymore. And at the same time, my heart is saying, you're not in remembrance. Rama, you're not in remembrance. What was all that practice for? And I'm literally getting depressed. Okay. So anyway, finally, there's a C-section, and we had to do a C-section. My son had turned, and and so then I was in the maternity ward for like 48 hours, and all I'm thinking is, I have failed miserably as an Abhyasi. What am I going to do? And then we came home, and like I think about a week after that, I just had a revelation. It was so beautiful. Every time I was thinking, I'm not thinking of my master, I'm not in remembrance, indirectly, in a roundabout way, I was in remembrance, if that makes sense. And then I understood the story of the Puranas, where Jaya Vijaya, who are the guards at Lord Vishnu's abode, they are cursed to be born on earth, and they go to Lord Vishnu and say, please, give us a method out of this. And Lord Vishnu says, 3 lifetimes as my enemy, or 7 lifetimes as my bhakta. And so they choose to be enemies because 7 lifetimes is too much, right? I don't want to be a bhakta, I would rather be your enemy. And so this reminded me of a conversation that Charji had with Babuji. At one point, we're saying, isn't it better to be your enemy? Because Ravana was liberated, Kumbhakarna was liberated, Shishupala was liberated. All these guys were liberated. How were they liberated? The Lord came to kill them and release them. And so Babuji laughs and says, to be an enemy, you have to be 100% enemy, right? And so I wanted to share this story. I mean, this is so spontaneous and extempore. What I'm sharing is sometimes we are very harsh on ourselves, saying, I'm not practicing, I'm not an ideal Abhyasi, I'm this, I'm that, and whatnot. But it's okay, because some way or the other, we're connected, and we just keep looking at what we're going through and try to improve and improve and improve. So how are we doing? It's been for almost 45 minutes since we started. And brain-based neuroscience research says that our attention span, it needs a transition every 20 to 25 minutes. So let's have a slight transition. And in the chat, if you could put what has been your experience in terms of your practice and constant remembrance. Whatever you feel like putting in brief. We could even make a scale, let's say 0 to 5. 5 is like, I am very satisfied with my practice. I am the best. I'm in master's heart. And 0 is like, oh my God, I need to pull my hair and somebody needs to drag me to the meditation chair every morning, otherwise I don't even show up. And we will have 2 minutes. Brother Kumar, please time us 2 minutes for 2 minutes for people to put in chat messages.
Sure, sister. Sure. Two minutes is done, sister.
Thank you, brother. So this is so wonderful. People participating, we see a range. And honestly, I don't think those numbers really matter as much as the spirit with which we approached it. So here's a trick sometimes, I think. I remember to myself saying once when my kids were very little, saying, doing dishes, and I'm like, Master, you're saying that we need to be in remembrance, and I have to warm milk, and I have to do this, and I have to do dishes. I have no idea how to be in remembrance, and just have that mental chatter with Master. So I guess maybe that's remembrance. I have no idea what it is and what it is not. But I'm so happy that Brother Leong, I'm not sure whether Sister Leong and several others, Nirai.
Sister Leong.
Okay, thank you. Sister Leong and somebody else, Nirai. You put a scale, where was I and where am I? That's lovely. So having talked about the practice, here's something I remember saying to a local sister when I was going through a stump. I said, can we be meditation buddies? And I'm not sure if she's here watching today or not. And she's like, yeah, let's be meditation buddies. So every morning, whenever I'm sitting for meditation, I'm going to text you. I'm sitting for meditation right now. And when I'm done, I'm done. And I'm going to be as honest as I can. If it's 10 minutes, it's 10 minutes. If it's 20, if it's 20. And if I cannot, then I'm just going to say, I could not meditate. I need to get to work. Maybe I'll meditate during lunch. Holding that accountability, it works. It works. So I'm going to say, let's hold each other accountable. Find a meditation buddy in your center or across the globe. And just a 2-minute time with each other texting. I did this. I did not do this. Okay, because even diary writing can be very challenging. It's very challenging for me. I'll be super honest. So with that, let's transition to Bhakti. In the last few talks, Daji has been emphasizing on Bhakti. I'm in a very small center. Richland is a very small place. And I really wanted to get together with like-minded people. So we started an Upanishad club where we could study the Upanishads. And this was like just a community-wide thing. So we were like 6 to 8 ladies reading Upanishads. And then this July, I felt like, you know what, we need to read Vinobaji's Gita. That's what Daji is asking. And so we're going to be reading that. And I wrote to Daji that we're going to be reading this with our group here. And I felt so grateful when he responded. He said, reading is good, but remember, it must culminate in bhakti. And then soon thereafter, in almost every talk, he was talking about bhakti. In one of his talks, he mentions the Narada Bhakti Sutras. And in Heartfulness 2018 Collector's Edition, in the back, he talks about karma, jnana, and bhakti. So remember, I said that in 1987 in Cormetz in the Preceptor Seminar, Chariji talked about karma, jnana, the base of the triangle, and bhakti, right? And so here, in these articles, Daji has given us a beautiful perspective on bhakti. He says that karma has to do with the body, jnana has to do with the mind, and bhakti relates to the soul. Which makes sense, right? Same thing like Chariji said, but he kind of presented in a different way. And then he goes back to the beginning of creation and the separation of the soul. And then he says, we have to invert it and remember that bhakti is at the base and knowledge and jnana are the outward manifestations. So we start with karma and jnana outward, go towards bhakti, and ultimately it has to become the center of our existence. So bhakti, we don't have a perfect word. And in the very beginning, I showed this book, Devotion from Smriti. And I'm going to read some of these quotes from this book. Lalaji says, it is evident that one has to give up his ego to become a devotee. After every statement, I'm going to pause for a few seconds so it sinks in, and I'll again repeat it. It is evident that one has to give up his ego to become a devotee. In devotion, equal importance is given to wisdom and subtlety. In devotion, equal importance is given to wisdom and subtlety. By Lalaji. Babuji says, complete resignation and unquestioning attitude in all matters is the highest form of devotion. Complete resignation and unquestioning attitude in all matters is the highest form of devotion. So if we have new seekers here I would like to elaborate on this, that this complete resignation and unquestioning attitude has to be natural only when we have accepted the guide as my guide. Lalaji has said three things: the Shastras or the scriptures, the guide, and the heart, the inner voice and the heart. They all have to agree in unison for us to follow. So when we are talking about complete resignation, we are not talking mind control. We are talking at the heart level. It has to come from the heart level. The highest type of bhakti is the unawareness of oneself and of the process. The effect of our deep devotion begins to resound in a way that we feel the ultimate is remembering us. The effect of our deep devotion begins to resound in a way that we feel the ultimate is remembering us. This reminds me of a story from the Bhagavata Purana that Chariji used to love sharing. It's in Heart to Heart, Volume 2, I believe. Daji has also referred to it. It so happens that Radha, who is in love with Krishna, she's saying Krishna, 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 Krishna. And she's so much absorbed in the remembrance of Krishna that she becomes Krishna and she's saying Radha, 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 Radha. And on the other hand, Krishna is remembering Radha. So the effect of our deep devotion begins to resound in a way that we feel the ultimate is remembering us. Kabir says, Mera Ram mujhe bhaje, tab main chain paun. I hope I'm just saying this from memory, but the idea here is my Lord Ram, when he starts remembering me, that is when I will have peace. And with this 90-day challenge that all the Malaysian Abhyasis are doing, this goes back to what Daji said in April 2019, I believe. And again, he's repeated, practice systematically with your heart and soul for 90 days, so the Guru can carry us in his womb and deliver. Sometimes we see very beautiful dreams. Sometimes the dreams may be scary. So with regards to dreams, Babuji says, when the devotion is developed in the heart of the Abhyasi for his master, the samskaras are thrown up in dreams. So devotion or bhakti can fry up all our samskaras. The superfine level of devotion may be spoken of as total self-surrender, from which the awareness of surrender has entirely been withdrawn by the grace of the Supreme Master himself. And Daji has been talking about Samarpan, Sharanagati. And as long as I have the feeling that I'm surrendering, obviously there's no surrender because there is I. And with that, let's think about how would devotion look like at the level of actions, at the level of the body. Devotion means, to my mind, what? perfect performance of your duty. This is from Chariji. In the Gita chapter 2, Lord Krishna says, Yogaha karmashu kaushalam. Yogaha karmasu kaushalam. Yoga is skill in action. So devotion, how would it get reflected as perfect performance of duty? I was looking at the Narada Bhakti Sutras, and it was very amazing to me that in verse 77, verse 78, in Narada Bhakti Sutras, it says, for a devotee, non-violence, truthfulness, purity, compassion, piety, and other essentials of good life should be maintained. I'm going to repeat this. Non-violence, truthfulness, purity, compassion, piety, and other essentials of good life should be maintained. So I'm going to pause for a few seconds here, and I am posing a question. What does this remind us of? Daji has been talking a lot about these things. Is there one word that comes to mind when we talk about these qualities? Please put in the chat if it comes to you. Let me give you a hint. How about Patanjali's Yoga Sutras? Yama and Niyama, exactly. Yeah, the qualities, yeah. So you can see that how Bhakti Yoga is not a distinct thing, but it is all encompassing. Next, Chariji says, to prove our devotion, we must be willing to die when it is not necessary for us to die. About dying, Babaji has said, destroy your creation and his creation comes into being. To prove our devotion, we must be willing to die when it is not necessary for us to die. I'm forgetting the name, but maybe somebody can remind me. Okay, I remembered. Ayaz, in Voice Reel, Complete Works of Ramchandra, Volume 2, Babuji talks about the story of Muhammad Ghazni and Ayaz. People were jealous of Ghazni. And why is it that he was most favored by the emperor? And the story goes like there was a big statue full of jewels or something like that. And we can look at Voice Reel for the accurate version. And Muhammad Ghazni asked people to break down that statue, whatever, destroy it. And everybody's like, how can we destroy it? It's so expensive. And he calls on Ayaz and he destroys it. And so, you know, so in terms of we must be willing to die, I read that as obedience. It is love, devotion, respect compounded into one essence, which we call Bhakti. And I felt like this was the most beautiful definition for Bhakti. It encompasses everything. A devotee has no desire, should have no desire. He accepts what comes. Again, from Chariji. Love, faith, belief, all combined with a worshipful attitude towards the master produces a bhakta. And the master is the essence, right? Not just the form. A devotee has no desire, should have no desire. He accepts what comes. And this brings me to our prayer. Last year, during the preceptor refresher course in December, January, and after that, a few more times, Daji has said, what if we take our 3 lines of prayer? O Master, thou art the real goal of human life. We are yet but slaves of wishes, putting bar to our advancement. Thou art the only God in power to help us reach that stage. What happens if we take away that second sentence? And he asked us to meditate over it. And incidentally, in the Narada Bhakti Sutras also, the renunciation of desire is mentioned as a quality. Verse number 62 in Narada Bhakti Sutras. So long as this bhakti is not achieved, the ordinary way of life should not be given up, but renunciation of the desire for reward of actions and discipline preparatory to it should be persistently practiced. Renunciation of the desire. So with this, I thought I want to kind of switch gears a little bit and come to the Bhagavad-Gita and see what can we learn about devotion from the Bhagavad-Gita. A little bit about what can we learn about devotion from some of the saints of the past. So for a true devotee, there has to be only one goal, and that's the beloved, the master, or who, or God, whatever. For example, in the Christian tradition, when I was reading Mother Teresa's biography, I was fascinated to learn that when they take their vows to become a nun, they're actually considered to be brides of Christ. And I thought, how beautiful, just like the gopis and Krishna. And so in the Bhagavad-Gita, there's an entire chapter devoted to devotion. And that's chapter 12, and it's called the Yoga of Devotion. We have a few other shlokas also, where the question is, Arjuna asks in the beginning of chapter 12, those devotees who ever steadfast worship you thus, and those again who worship the imperishable, the unmanifest, which of these are better versed in yoga? And Lord Krishna says, those who have fixed their minds on me, and who ever steadfast and endowed with supreme Shraddha worship me, them do I consider perfect. And somewhere else he says, Bhakta nam ativa me priyaha, my devotees are the dearest to me. And that is where Daji is leading us more and more to remember about devotion. For those whose thought is set on me, I become very soon, O Partha, the deliverer from the ocean of the mortal samsara. Fix your mind on me alone. Let your thoughts dwell in me. You will hereafter live in me alone. Of this there is no doubt. In the Narada Bhakti Sutras, verse number 82, it says, although devotional service is one, it becomes manifested in 11 forms of attachment. And I thought that was beautiful. So let's go with this. Attachment to the Lord's glorious qualities, to his beauty, to worshiping him, to remembering him, to serving him, to reciprocating with him as a friend, to caring for him as a parent, to dealing with him as a lover, to surrendering one's whole self to him, to being absorbed in the thought of him, and to experience separation from him. This last is the supreme attachment. So this kind of brings us to the stories of many saints from different cultures. Their service, their surrender. In the New Testament, we have the story of Martha and Mary. And Charaji refers to this in volume 2 of Heart to Heart. So it so happens that Jesus is coming to this town where Martha and Mary, who are sisters, are there living. And Martha is serving all the guests in the house. And Mary is just sitting at the feet of Jesus. She's absolutely lost in him. And Martha starts getting a little frustrated and she asks Jesus, she says, how come that she's sitting here with you? Shouldn't she be helping me help serve all those who have come with you? And Jesus says, she's where she needs to be and you are where you need to be. And that reminds me of our human frailties, of our jealousies, and how we are so connected with each other when we are away physically from the ashram, from Master's presence. And when we go to the ashram, we start comparing. And so just the humility and the acceptance to remember, I'm where I need to be, he or she is where they need to be. So Charaji was saying, the ultimate culmination would be where a Martha can become a Mary and a Mary can become a Martha, and that is devotion. So this is what we see in the Narada Bhakti Sutras also. To serving him, that was Martha. And, worshiping, remembering him as a lover, and, that was Mary. And as I was reading all these qualities about the devotee, it humbled me. I started recognizing that I was being judgmental. Even as a young girl, when I was sitting in that temple and saying, what are all these people doing? The bhajan is going on and they're not paying attention. They're not lost in remembrance. It made me realize that just the fact that they were present there was part of their journey, and I was being judgmental. And so that's something I got to work on. I never understood the story of the Satyanarayana Katha and how God can punish. Lord Satyanarayana can punish because you never took the prasadam or you forgot to complete the puja or whatever. One day I was sitting in a friend's house for the Satyanarayana Puja some years ago, and it dawned on me. When you sit for 30 minutes to 60 minutes to 2 hours, even if it is with fear that if I go, God will curse me, even if I sit with a fear, that fear will eventually get transformed because the inquiry will start. How can it be? And so in those 2 hours, maybe 1 minute, if I'm absorbed in godly remembrance, then the path opens up. So, sisters and brothers, I started understanding a lot more about the rituals after I started Sahaj Marg, and the inner understanding came through an reflection. I started understanding that in the rituals, when you have the incense and the camphor and incense, they're gone by the end of the prayers. They're no longer there, which means I should no longer be there. Once I go and worship, I should no longer be there. So those rituals have a significance. The flowers with which we are adorning the Lord So we have this famous devotee in South India, Andal, who used to make all these garlands of flowers for Lord Krishna in the temple. So let us learn from each other and not be judgmental, because we don't know what is in each other's heart. As long as I'm judgmental, the ego is there. My path towards devotion is not even opened up. In the Hindi literature, contemporary Hindi literature, I want to quote a sentence from Amitabh Bachchan's dad, Harivansh Rai Bachchan. He was a great poet and a writer. And he wrote a poetry whose title was Madhushala. Madhushala. In simple words, the place where you go and get drunk, to the bar. And he writes this beautiful poem. And in that one, there's one sentence, it stuck with me all the way from my middle school. Bair badhate mandir masjid, mail karati madhushala. Bair, enmity, badhate, increases, mandir, temple, masjid, mosque. So the temples and mosques are increasing our enmity, but the bar is letting people come together, because when you go to the bar to get drunk, nobody cares whether you're a Christian, Muslim, or Hindu. You're all getting there, sitting there and getting drunk. So again, I go back to my younger days in middle school and high school, thinking, so maybe there was judgment, maybe there was processing, maybe there was analysis and reflection, or trying to discern, thinking, why would a lot of our world's poetry have wine and alcohol in it, especially Urdu, Persian poetry? Even in the Bible, there's so much reference to the wine. And in one of the very old constant remembrances, I remember there was a verse which apparently Babuji quoted, and it was written by Ghalib, who was a poet. And Babuji explains there. He said, the love for God is spiritual intoxication. Because there are no words to express in everyday language to everyday people, the poets use wine and, the lover and the beloved, these examples. So that was a big revelation for me. Another big revelation for me was growing up, I studied in a Christian convent. Remember I said many elders, when I would ask questions, they wouldn't answer me. So I used to wonder, how is it that Lord Krishna has 16,000 wives? How's that possible, right? And so coming into Sahaj Marg, coming into Heartfulness, then you understand that there's Prakriti and Purusha. So there's the male and the female principle. And the divine love is depicted as Rasa Leela. And in Babaji's autobiography, which is Whispers from the White World, the 4 series of Orange books, in that there's a lot of clarifications given in that regard also. So devotion and love, these are all part of Bhakti. Swami Vivekananda has written and spoken about Bhakti Yoga. He spoke about all the yogas, and one of the most profound readings I found years ago was his commentary on the Bhakti Yoga. He said something very profound, and I don't have the exact quote, so I'm paraphrasing. He said, every action in the world comes from the base of love. Whether it's a robber stealing something, or whether it is a mother caring for the baby, or whether it's a saint. And so he said, the whole journey is about transforming and transmutation of the love that's at the base level, where the robber thinks only by robbing and stealing and killing somebody, I can protect and provide for my family. I love my wife. I love my kids. I have to provide for them. This is the only way I can do it, to take it to the highest level. So he said the spiritual journey is going from the lowest form of love to the highest form of love. And we find that story, that reality manifested in sage Valmiki, who wrote the Ramayana. Sage Valmiki was not a sage in his early days. He was a dacoit. People, when they were traveling through the forest, he would rob them. And once it so happens that sage Narada is going through the forest, and Valmiki, at that time, his name was Ratnakar. He stops him and he says, give me your possessions otherwise, and threatens him. And so sage Narada smiles and says, okay, I'll give you, but why are you doing all this? And he says, because I have to provide for my family, for my mother, my father, my wife, my kids. So sage Narada says, okay, so the sin that you're going to accrue from these actions, will they take a portion of it? Will they share your papam, your sin? He says, of course they will. Why not? They're my wife and my kids and my parents. I love them. They love me. They're going to share. And so sage Narada says, why don't you go and ask? And he says, oh, no, you're going to run away. No, I'm not going to go away anywhere. I'm going to be right here. Why don't you go and ask, and then come back and tell me, and I'll give you my vida. That's the only thing I have. So Valmiki goes and he says to his wife, look, honey, I'm robbing people, bringing you all this wonderful jewelry because you're my wife and I love you. But apparently I'm also collecting a lot of sin, okay? All these bad karma. So will you be sharing this bad karma with me? And the wife says, no, your duty is to provide for your family. How you provide is your problem. I'm not sharing with you. Same thing with his parents, and same thing with the kids. And so Ratnakar is absolutely bewildered. He's like totally out of it. And he goes back dejected to where Narada is, and he says, this is what my family is saying. What do I do? And so Narada says, take refuge in Rama. Now, it so happens, his condition was so much at the baser level that he could not say Rama. So the mantra he gets is Mara, 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 Mara. And slowly it starts becoming Rama, 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 Rama. So in one of the talks, when one of our friends from the Telangana seminar asked Daji how to get bhakti, because you can have Brahmarakshas and you can fall and all that, but the bhaktas never fall. So Daji says you have to work on it, right? It's not like something that can be given, there's no trick here. But I do believe there is a trick, in the sense that the practice is the trick. As we are practicing, the Mara, 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 Mara became Rama, 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 Rama. Like this, there's another story in Zen Buddhism. It so happens that there's this village, and there's a monastery up on the hills. So people from different parts of the world are coming and going to this monastery to learn to meditate from the Lama. And there's this illiterate, uneducated, poor man. He keeps looking at everybody and he says, I want to go there and I want to meditate, but I don't know how to. And finally one day he goes. When he goes to the Lama says, I want to meditate. Teach me how to meditate. The Lama says, not yet. So what can you do? You have to spend some time here in the monastery. What can you do? How can you serve? So lots of options are given. And this poor man, young man, he says, I can't cook, I can't do this, I can't wash, I don't know how to do, I don't know anything. I don't know how to read, write. So the Lama says, okay, tell me, what is it that you think you can do? Is there any one thing that you can do? And this boy says, yes, I can sweep. So the Lama says, wonderful. Here's your broom. Start sweeping the monastery morning and evening. And when the time comes, I will call you and I'll teach you how to meditate. And so every day this boy is cleaning. And his faith is so much that one day my master will call me. And like this, 20 years pass, or God knows however many years, a very long time passes. Then one day, the Lama finally calls him and he says, my son, you're ready to learn meditation. And the boy says, I am? So he says, yeah, but I don't think you really need to learn how to meditate. You're beyond that stage. And this boy is even more bewildered. I am? I don't need to learn how to meditate? The Lama says, yes, tell me, what did you do all these years? He said, I was sweeping the floor. I was sweeping the monastery. I was keeping it clean. And then I started noticing my thoughts. And my bad thoughts started going away. Practice, right? And so the practice brought him to that stage where he didn't have to meditate. So that was one story I wanted to share. And I will quickly go over a few examples on bhakti, bhaktas, and devotion. Babuji talks about two people in his writings, about Hanuman and Bharat as devotees. Any idea who is held in a higher regard by Babuji in his writings? Go ahead and put in the chat. 30 seconds. Whom did Babuji hold in a higher regard, Bharat or Hanuman? So I won't give you the answer. I'm going to say, let's go back and read the maxims and also Towards Infinity, Incomplete Works, and let's see if we can discover for ourselves, because the joy will be huge if you can discover for yourself. Okay. Another story, which is in the Bhagavata Purana, is about Lord Krishna. I'm trying to find some stories which are not very commonly known. So once sage Narada is jealous because Lord Krishna does not agree with his assumption that he's the greatest devotee in the universe. Okay, so sage Narada, Babuji says, is in the heart, he's playing his tune in the heart region. And there's a very special story I want to share. This was 1994, and in Manapakam, we were sitting with Chariji, like we were a group of about 20 people or 15 people. And Chariji was narrating an incident, and the topic of Narada came up. And so apparently Babuji once asked him, like, what if he would like to be somebody, who would he like to be? Okay. And Chariji said, I'd like to be Sage Narada. You know, he could go around in the 7 universes with his Veena and everything. And then Babuji told him, you are way beyond that. Okay. And then I remember reading in Complete Works, where Babaji says that Narada is still playing his tune in the heart region. And then now we have the Narada Bhakti Sutras. So I have some things to figure out or to be revealed. But we have all these stories, and Narada was a little bit unhappy that Lord Krishna did not acknowledge him to be the greatest devotee. So he says, okay, I have a headache, and you can go around the universe and tell everybody that Lord Krishna has a headache. Krishna has a headache, and there's only one remedy for it. You have to get the pada dhuli. Pada is foot, dhuli is dirt, dust. So the pada dhuli of a devotee can only heal my headache. That's the only thing that will heal my headache. So Sage Narada goes around the 7 universes asking everybody. He himself is not able to give the pada dhuli. He's like, how can I? And as he's about to go, Lord Krishna says to him, you have to tell them one more thing, that if I use their pada dhuli to relieve my headache, they're going to end up in Naraka, hell. Okay. So everybody wants to give pada dhuli, but when they hear that you're going to end up in Naraka, they're like, oh, no, I don't want to go into Naraka. And they all decline. So he comes back and he says, nobody's agreeing. He says, really? Did you go everywhere? How about go to Vrindavan and ask the gopis? And he goes to Vrindavan and all the gopis are like, yes, take. And he says, but you're going to go to Naraka. And they say, how does it matter? As long as my beloved Lord Krishna, his headache has been relieved, what does it matter where I am? Right? So that feeling of insignificance and total, surrender, where the Lord's happiness and joy means everything to me. Another thought that came to me while I was pondering over devotion and devotees, in this Whispers, we had the word trials. There's so many trials in life. And when I think about trials, I'm ashamed to say, I think too much about my trials. And don't remember how many trials our masters have gone through, our saints of the past have gone through. And one of the examples that stood out for me in the Ramayana was Vibhishan. He was a devotee of the Lord, and he is living in this land of the Asuras, of the Rakshasas, with Ravana, and he's every day worshiping, devotion. I thought, my gosh, I need to learn from him. Devotion can be in terms of being a parent in our everyday life. We have to be devoted to our kids. So what does it mean? I want to share a story that I remember. Chariji was narrating this story. There were a group of people. This was in Atlanta. And he said, in our Indian itihasas, who is the ideal mother? And so we were thinking Ramayana, Mahabharata, I was thinking. And then he gave us a hint. He said, Kunti or Gandhari? Everybody present thought Kunti. And he said, no, Gandhari. Kunti's life physically was hard, but she had 5 sons who were on the path of righteousness. Her husband was on the path of righteousness, even though he was short-lived. So if you're on the path of dharma, whether you're in the palace or in exile, you have peace of mind and you go to bed peacefully. But Gandhari, with her brother, with her husband, Dhritarashtra, and Duryodhana, every day waking up and saying, my son, follow the path of dharma, telling her husband, telling her brother. That was her devotion to her family, to the path of dharma. So she is the model. So as a young mother, when I had to make difficult decisions, I thought about Gandhari often, and how Chariji said that she's an ideal mother. Another 2-3 examples I want to share is the Gopikas were very jealous of Radha. They asked Krishna, why is Radha your favorite? And he asked them, to look at the flute, and there's nothing inside the flute. So Radha is just like that, totally empty. We have the story in Mahabharata where Arjuna gets the Vishvarupa Darshana and the Gita revelation because he's the Sakha of the Lord. So devotion as a Sakha. Sahadeva, the youngest of the Pandavas, comes and tells Krishna, I'm going to stop this war by wrapping you around my fingers with devotion. And Lord Krishna says, no, don't do that. So with that, I want to kind of pause here and open up the chat and see if any other examples come to you. Feel free to share the name of any stories that stand out for you in terms of devotion or any characters. Dhruva Shabari, yes. So the story of Shabari is she's tasting the berries so the Lord won't get a bitter one. Meera. And Charji once said, all of you are fond of singing Meera bhajans, but can you leave your house and come for a celebration like Meera? Karn and Arjun. I'm not sure in reference to Karn and devotion. He was devoted to Duryodhana for his, he felt the burden of all the things Duryodhana gave him. And so he had all the great qualities, but he was devoted to the wrong cause. Dhruva, yes, he goes into the forest as a little kid. And Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And he's not afraid. All the wild animals come and surround him. And I don't know if anybody has seen an article that was published in the Indian newspapers a while ago about a temple somewhere in Rajasthan where the priest is sleeping and the cheetah comes every night and sleeps next to him. And once the wildlife department found out, they put closed circuit cameras, CC, and they actually recorded that. So that's another example. And then Bhramar Geet is a composition where Uddhava, who's a cousin and one of the greatest devotees of Lord Krishna, Lord Krishna sends him to the gopis to teach them, to give them jnana. And the gopis say, we don't know anything about jnana, we only know our Krishna. So he comes, he has a shift in his consciousness and he realizes how important this is to have that devotion. And Master is constantly leading us towards devotion by Lakshman in the form of service. And want to quickly talk about Sufism, Rabia of Basra. She was a great devotee. She was one of 4 children. She was orphaned. She was sold. She was a slave. And in my everyday protected world, I don't understand what a slave is. I'm thinking that just, doing household chores, but I was doing some more research and I found that she was actually a sex slave. But she was so pure in heart, she was praying, and at night her master saw that there was light glowing from her and he let her free. So whatever our profession, the purity of the heart it can always manifest itself, and Sudama and Krishna. So I'm going to pause here. I want to honor all our time. I want to honor each and every one of you for being present. And listening is hard to sit on Zoom. And I hope most of you who were off camera were standing up in between and kind of standing on one leg and listening or something to get some blood circulation going. So I'm going to hand over to Sister Shanti and Brother Ramesh and see where we want to go next in the next few minutes before we disperse at 12:30.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rama. Would you need to take a break, or would you like to take 2-minute break?
I'm good. I still have some water in my cup.
Okay. So if that's the case, we can maybe we could proceed to the questions.
Sure.
Thank you so much for a nice talk, and especially all the stories which tied it all together. It's I'm sure there's so many stories on devotion, which is very nice to hear. Maybe another time we could go through all the lovely stories, actually the real life stories of devotion too, even in the current times. So, okay, so maybe we could proceed with the questions if it's all right. But there's one question which you started, which nothing to do with Bhakti now. I'm going to ask you. You said, you asked a question which was not answered when you said, why do the ladies wear wet saris and cook? So I would like to know that answer first.
Oh, that's such a lovely question. Okay, so this is the bindi. In North India, they call it tika. In Telugu, we say bottu. In the olden days, even men used to put it, and except it used to be like this. And I think, or it was like this, namam, right? So this is the seat of, this is where Agya Chakra is, the pineal gland. And it represents the brain and the memory. So this whole sticker bindi is a modern creation.
Yeah.
My mother, my grandmother would always put kumkum 3-4 times a day. You sweat, it wipes off, and you put fresh kumkum, wash your face and everything. This sticker bindi is out of convenience. So the kumkum comes from the root of a plant, which is like turmeric root, right? So then this plant root, that's where kumkum is coming from, and it's powdered. And then you also have something called sandalwood, and we take the gandham. Like you take that wood and you put it, dip it in water, and you rub it on a stone surface, and you will get the chandan. Hindi, we say chandan, and you put it here. It has cooling properties. Okay. So when we do our morning prayers, we adorn the Lord with kumkum and with flowers. We finish our worship. And at the end, we take some more of that and we put it here, because this is the seat of consciousness, of memory, because this is all the mental work. And so we say, oh Lord, I spent this morning worshiping you with whatever shlokas, namam, whatever. May I carry your divine consciousness in my memory for the daily activities. And so that is how we put the kumkum and bindi and the namam. Now men don't put, but during a marriage ceremony or special occasion, they'll still put. And so that's why I still put my bindi every day in America and go to work. And I'm very proud to share that when people used to ask me in the beginning, it's very funny. People used to say, hey, does that dot mean that you're available? I'm like, no. Let me educate you. This is what the religious significance is. So that is the beauty of the bindi. And so it just brings us back to constant remembrance that when I leave home, I'm going to do my work in divine remembrance.
That's for this. The sari you were mentioning that was wet. You remember?
Oh, the wet sari, yes.
Yes.
So there were quite a few things at that time. So in the olden days, the beauty of the Sanatana Dharma is there's scientific reasoning behind everything. But in the medieval times, it just became rituals and we lost its meaning. And Swami Vivekananda said, the bane of Hinduism is that it has been confined to the kitchen. So we did not have refrigerators, we did not have air conditioners, and we wanted to be pure. You had to go to the river or to the well and get water. You're getting muddied, you are doing all kinds of chores and work. And so you have to now go and cook. So pour a couple of mugs of water, purify yourself. So you go into the kitchen pure. So you're cooking in a hygienic, sterile environment. That is my scientific mind that gave me that answer. And I actually have a lot of empathy now for my grandmas. I was very judgmental as a young girl. I was not kind to them.
We all.
Yeah.
That is interesting. So yeah, I thought so. Oh, I thought it's to keep cool or, the fire and things like that. Anyway, let's go forward to the questions on discipline and bhakti. I would start with the first one. Can there be actually joy in discipline when many times it just has a negative kind of, many people see it as a negative discipline. So even as maybe in our practice also, of course, it demands a little discipline. So what are your thoughts on that?
That's such a lovely question, because Charji once said, the word discipline, I have to pause 1 second. And I have to tell you, in Heartfulness and Sahajmarg, I learned a lot of things. From Charji, I learned English language. Even though I'm educated, I actually learned English language from him. So this is how he explained it once. He said, discipline, disciple. A disciple is somebody who's disciplined. When it is internal discipline, it's joyful. When it is a military discipline, it can be joyful when I am joining the military to serve my country. But if I'm being drafted by an autocratic ruler to serve the country, there's no joy, right? So that negative connotation comes from the external manifestation of discipline. So I think discipline is really, being meticulous about something. I really want to do this the right way. I need to get up at 5 a.m. and do it. But then the internal discipline needs to take over. What's the difference between 5 a.m. and 5 p.m? Should I not be in a meditative state all the time?
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So
Should.
then when that internal discipline comes in, there is joy in it. So ultimately, I feel like sometimes the deepest levels of reflection and self-analysis can happen when we are doing chores that nobody wants to do. Like when I'm super angry, I go and clean my bathrooms because I'm so angry and the bathroom tile is going to shine, but in the process, my anger goes away. So in some ways, that is my way of channeling my energy and being disciplined about not retaliating against somebody else. I'm kind of going into the material field also, because so the discipline is not just in terms of meditation. The discipline is also about stopping at the red lights. If I don't stop at the red lights, somebody will hit me, somebody else will get hit, and there's going to be chaos. So discipline is joyful because it leads to harmony.
I can see that. I think it also helps to protect ourselves. So we, as you said, you may get hit at the red light if you don't stop. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. The next question, a discipline which cannot come from within yourself is no discipline at all. Chariji had said this once.
Right.
Would you like to elaborate on this? A discipline which cannot come from within yourself is no discipline at all.
And so I see an element of love and devotion here. So when there's love and devotion, it becomes so much more easy to be disciplined. So a surgeon has to go through the discipline of putting on the sterile equipment, using the sterile equipment, wearing the face shield and the gloves, because it's the question of saving somebody's life, right? And it is because of that internal discipline, like I want to do no harm to this patient, even though my movements are restricted, like right now in COVID, how much our physicians and nurses have to wear that discipline to protect our patients. And that discipline is coming from within for the love of their job, for the love of God, for the love of our family.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Another question from our viewers. What do you understand by the power of devotion? Perhaps you can give some examples, but I think you have done, you had given some examples of from the Narada, but maybe you want to add something, that what is the power of devotion?
The power of devotion, I feel, is that the Lord's vision will be on us 100%. In the sense that if we look at the Mahabharata, on the before the war, when Lord Krishna goes to the Sabha to make an offer that if we have at least 5 villages, we won't go for a war. And Duryodhana said, not even the land that would be covered by the tip of a needle. And okay, that's how the meeting in the Sabha ends. And then Krishna is invited to have dinner in the palace, and he refuses. And he goes to Vidura's house. And Babuji describes that when Vidura comes home, he's seeing that his wife is not even properly dressed, and she's feeding Lord Krishna bananas. Guess what? She's giving him the peel and putting away the fruit, and the Lord is eating so joyfully. I feel like that's the ultimate power of devotion, where she was so devoted, she had no awareness of what she was doing. She was offering with love. Same thing with Shabri. Her guru said, Lord Ram will come from here. And every day she's tasting those berries because Lord Ram will come, and he eventually comes. And Master has also given a very beautiful talk called Faith Moves Mountains in the Principles of Sahaj Mark series, where there was a saint, not saint, but some sage or, rishi or somebody who's doing a lot of tapasya in South India. And there is an uneducated fellow. And so this uneducated fellow hears that if you go north, there's River Ganga. And if you take a dip in the Ganga, you'll attain liberation. He goes, he finds a canal. He thinks, oh, north. And he takes a dip and again takes a dip. And then some educated person comes and says, oh, you fool, this is not the Ganga. Go further north like this. And so this sage or rishi or whoever this was, it so happens at the time of death, he ends up in hell. And this fellow who never even reached Ganga, he ends up in heaven. And then the sage is saying, where is the justice here? This is not right. And the Lord says, you know what? He had faith. You tried to destroy his faith. And so if we have faith, and devotion, then the Lord reveals himself. And there's another story by Sri Ramakrishna Paramahansa, which literally brings tears to my eyes. So there was this prostitute, and there was the temple priest. Now, it so happened that every day when the temple priest had to go to the temple, he had to go from the lane where the prostitute used to live. And every time he saw her, he would throw a stone and he would curse her. And these stones eventually became like a mountain of stones. Like, that's how much he cursed her. And this poor prostitute, every night she's crying and she says, I have no other means of living. This is the only way. Oh Lord, when will you relieve me of this sin? She goes to heaven, he goes to hell. And again, the priest is saying, how come? I worked all life serving you in the temple. And the Lord says, you went through the motions, and she purified her sins with tears at night. And so that's what Daji has been revealing to us about the 10th maxim, which I'm very weak on, where he says, at night, bedtime prayer, repent for the wrongs unknowingly committed, resolve not to do them again. And, many of us, most of us who are in Sahaj Marg, in Heartfulness Way, I'm pretty confident we don't make many mistakes that we need to repent on. When we make a mistake, we do repent. We are aware of it immediately. So does it mean we have mastered 10th maxim? And no, because Master has revealed that every moment that I'm not remembering him, I need to repent for that. And it's been mentioned in the Narada Bhakti Sutras also. So that was a huge, huge revelation for me. So the power of devotion those night bedtime tears, Babuji says, fake tears. And we see that in the case of that prostitute, how it delivered her.
Such a nice, very good example, very nice.
About 4 minutes left, sister.
Yeah, it's probably just 1 or 2 more. Right. Masters have always taught that a true devotee is one who loves him not for any favor or worldly purpose, but merely for love's sake. Would you like to comment on this, or do you think you've covered that?
I think I would like to end with one quotation by Daji, and then I would be grateful if we could play that 3-minute video clip from Daji on Bhaktas.
Okay.
This is from Proceedings of the First Crest Seminar. This is on page 539. In the First Crest Seminar, Chariji had invited several people to give talks, and Daji had given a talk on the Gujarat School of Saints. And so he's talking about Sri Krishna, the love of the gopis and everything, and Dwaraka and Bhakti. And this is what he says. As expounded by Sri Krishna to Arjuna, those that are devoted to me, parenthesis, love him who loves all, close parenthesis, are not yet fully true bhaktas. I'm going to repeat this. Those that are devoted to me, love him who loves all, are not yet fully true bhaktas, for I verily regard them as my true bhaktas who are also devoted to my devotees, and within parenthesis, love all whom he loves. So Daji took this shloka from the Gita, from chapter 12, which I had earlier mentioned, and he has framed it to us in a very simple way with love him who loves all, which was given by Babuji, love all whom he loves by Chariji, and now Daji has said, love all, hurt none. And with the hurt none, I'm so grateful that Daji has brought heartful communications to us. And it's been very profound for me as an educator. Love all, hurt none, in the sense that sometimes we may think we have the right intent, our actions have a good intent, we are doing it with a pure heart, but it may have a different impact on others, like unintended consequences, right? So like when plastic was made in the beginning of this century, it was a great discovery, but now plastic is polluting our oceans, killing marine life, coming up the food chain. So that's been very, very profound. So those that are devoted to me, love him who loves all, are not yet fully true bhaktas, for I verily regard them as my truest bhaktas who are also devoted to my devotees. Love all whom he loves, and love all, hurt none. I think if we really want to be true bhaktas, heartful communications is another tool for us to practice devotion. Every single time imagining I'm talking to the master in front of me, the master in me is talking to the master in front of me. The master is sitting at my dining table and having dinner with me. The master is driving the car with me. The master is cleaning the toilets with me. And so I don't even know if I am 0.01% of a bhakta or not. There's so many faults in me. There's so many things that need to be improved. But I'm so grateful for this opportunity, because I felt like when you speak about something, you grow. And so I'm very grateful for this opportunity. Thank you so much. And if we can request Brother Kumar to share the video, and then we can leave silently. Thank you.
So right now, I will, if you want to leave silently, we will say the thank yous to you first. We really appreciate your time and all your inputs. And many times you speak actually for us, which we are all on that path and very imperfect, as you said, constant remembrance or even devotion. Exactly what you said. That's you're reflecting to us what we are feeling. And that's very nice. And on behalf of Heartfulness Malaysia, we thank all our viewers, and thank you so much, Dr. Rama, for taking the time for us. So we will end by playing the video as requested by you, and we will silently leave. Thank you so much. So,
thank you, sister. Short prayer to all of you. Before you watch the video, just make an intention in your heart that it's the master, the divine within me, is going to watch this video so that the key for devotion, the path of devotion, gets opened up for us.
Thank you.
So bhakti is a paramount factor in this entire exercise, whatsoever you may be doing. Whether you are studying as a student, or you are teaching as a teacher, or you are doing your house chores as a housewife, or you're going out to office or in the business world, everything, without an exception, it can become a burden moment you lose interest. So the idea of maintaining interest, and if you can still take it further and say, oh, I love it, it's not just my interest. And a stage comes where you say, my life cannot exist without this very fundamental thing I love. And that's when it culminates into bhakti. What does bhakti culminate into? Here I would like to add and reveal a top secret today. Though it's not really a secret, but without this bhakti, you cannot develop your own spiritual entity. The master's mind cannot absorb the vibrations from the unloving heart. That means one who is not a bhakta, true bhakta, not for the namesake, not just because you have been meditating for last 45 years or 50 years. That doesn't make you really a bhakta. But do you feel in your heart that without the glance, without attention of my master, I remain like a dry desert where nothing grows, barren? Such souls, though they may practice, it's a labor and cannot advance. You need this spice called love in everything that we do, and more so when you're building relationship with our gurus, with our Lord and God. One has to be absolutely honest and authentically loving, because you just cannot cheat them, remember. And without this honesty, authenticity, and true love we call bhakti, formation of spiritual entity is next to impossible. Thank you. We'll explore this further later on.